Pedro from A&P-Reacts. I'm here today with Megan of Vexed to talk about Culling Culture, out May 21st on Napalm Records. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm really looking forward to picking your brain about this debut album and what an album it is. But let's start.
Thank you.
Let's start from the beginning. When did this record start to take shape for you guys?
So we started, one of the first songs that we wrote for it, which was actually Misery. We wrote that 3 years ago. So, but we didn't know that it was going to be put on the album. We decided to start writing the album 2 years ago. And then we felt that Misery was, good enough to go on. So, yeah, it's been 2 very, very long years that it's been ready for. And then obviously Rona hit and ruined everything. So we've been sitting around waiting to release it for quite a long time. It feels like forever.
Was that extra difficult for you guys to have to sit on a record for this long? And being the debut album, I'm sure you guys were dying to have it out there.
Yeah, it's been torture. In some ways, I'm quite grateful for it, though, because it's given us the chance to kind of mature as people. Like, we wrote this when I was 24 and I'm now coming up to 27. So I've had some time to kind of mature and learn how to deal with certain things that I don't think I would have been able to handle quite as well when I was younger. So even though it's only been 2 years, we've all definitely matured quite a bit and learned how to handle things in the industry a bit better. So it's been positive in some ways, but yeah, sitting around in my bedroom for a year and a half has been bizarre.
It's been torture.
Yeah. Yeah, it really has been.
So where the title of the record comes from, Culling Culture, does that have to do a little bit with our current culture, or is there something else that really drove that name for this album?
So we were trying to think of a name for ages. We'd had the album recorded for a long time and we could not decide on a name for, I think, about 6 months. It was a long time. And for ages, it was actually called something else that I look back on it now and it's terrible. But we thought of the time where cancel culture was becoming a thing, and Brexit in the UK was happening, and basically the world was on fire. And each of the tracks are actually written about individual people in my life that I've gotten rid of. And when we're talking in our group chat, band chat, we often say things like, oh, cull them, get rid of them, cull them from your life. And so it kind of, we took inspiration from the whole cancel culture where, you kind of get rid or cancel people for doing bad things. But we kind of made it more a personal thing by making it culling culture, referring to all the people in those songs, if that makes any sense. Long-winded answer.
So this album, from your perspective, has a real personal touch as far as these songs go.
Yeah. It's really personal because every single song is about an individual who I no longer have anything to do with. So some of the songs can be quite painful to kind of not necessarily talk about, but perform and kind of relive in a way. And then other ones are quite thick. So yeah, really personal.
Now, you mentioned that you guys have matured over the last couple of years, but this record, in my opinion, shows a lot of poise, a lot of maturity. When you look at a debut record, you normally always find some common rookie mistakes, I like to call it. It's a natural thing in terms of being an album that it's taken a long time to get from the starting point to the finish point, because normally it's an accumulation of tracks over a large period of time, which is exactly what's happened with you guys. And then when you put them together on a record setting, it normally comes across that way. You could see the age or how different each song has aged over time. And then sometimes there's a problem in getting them to kind of coexist with one another, which really hurts the overall playability of the album. None of that is happening on this record. Why?
I don't know. Thank you, firstly. That's incredibly kind of you. God, I don't really know. I mean, I think it may have something to do with the fact that we didn't put any restrictions on ourselves. The day that we decided to make Vexed and start writing Vexed songs, we didn't conform to anything that we had usually been told we needed to do or needed to sound like. We just had this new sense of freedom and completely wrote what we wanted to write without thinking, well, I'm a girl and it's a female fronted metal band, so I should probably do this, or I should probably do that. We were just like, nah, fuck all that. We're going to do exactly what we want. So I suppose there is just complete freedom and honesty in all of the songs, and we're not trying to sound like anybody else or anything in particular. So maybe that has something to do with it. But otherwise, I don't know. I'm incredibly honoured and humble that you should say that. That's very, very kind of you.
Yeah, it was the first thing that I noticed. I was expecting the album to feel a little bit broken, to feel like the songs would perhaps have the strength on the individual basis, but when you put them together in an album, it would be kind of hard to go from track to track. And it wasn't the case. Like, the album has great playability from the top all the way to the bottom. So kudos to you guys.
Thank you. Yeah, it was quite important for us to make sure that it flowed well, because when we found out,
you just lost it for a second there.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it was quite important for us to make sure that it flowed well, because when we found out, obviously, that it was going to be released with Napalm, and they print vinyls, it sounds bizarre, but I was thinking to myself, you know, I used to sit with my granddad and listen to vinyls, and it's so nice when something flows from one to the other. And so it kind of changed things for us, where we thought, right, well, we should probably do some interludes and make sure that songs kind of merge well. So even though we'd written all the songs bar one, we kind of knew that if this is going to go onto a vinyl, it all needs to be one big cohesive thing that kind of finishes where it started off, kind of thing. So yeah, we didn't intentionally look at it from that perspective right until the last minute, but it just kind of all fell into place and worked out quite well.
And how is the creative process behind the band? Because being a debut record, there's obviously going to be certain challenges, but how do you guys tackle the actual creation of these songs? Does everybody have a specific role, or you guys kind of work as a group?
So yeah, it's definitely a group effort. We always meet up at one of our houses, and we sit down and we just start playing random things that we've written. We tend to write off hooks. So if I've got like a vocal hook that I really like and I've been singing in my head over and over again, I'll either sing it or scream it to the boys, and then they'll write something to it. Or Jay, who's our guitarist, will, you know, say, oh, I've come up with a riff, and then I'll try and think of something to go with it. So we all very much write our own stuff, but we also do help each other out. And if we don't like something, we're really honest with each other, and we'll be like, no, that's shit, I don't like that.
You guys are not afraid to step on each other's toes?
No, never. And there's been many times where, like, in the studio, there was a way that I was singing a line in Epiphany, and Jay actually stopped me like halfway through and was like, Meg, I really don't like that. I really don't want it to be on the album. And I was like, fine. And I just sung it a different way. So we're all completely open to, you know, just being honest and talking it through.
It's about making the best music possible, not necessarily about the individual egos of the band.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we all wanted to make sure that we all did or played or sung what we needed to get off our chests. So there's certain things, like there's a couple of guitar parts that I'm not massively keen on, and there's a couple of vocal bits that, you know, the boys aren't massively keen on, but I'll say something like, look, I really like it, I'm really proud of it, do you mind if we keep it? And they're like, yeah, okay. It's not going to make or break the song. So I think it's important to have compromise. But it's also important, you know, when somebody's saying, I really, really don't like that, to not let your egos get in the way and say, okay, let's do something else then.
Looking back at the whole creative process and the whole time that it's taken you guys to get to the finish line, what was perhaps the most challenging aspect of putting Culling Culture together? Perhaps something that you could actually learn from as you move into the next record. You try to remove that from the equation.
I think just generally trying to find our sound. Like I said, Misery was the first song that we wrote together for Culling Culture, but we didn't know that it was going to be on there. It was just like a standalone song that we were actually going to release, like our other two tracks, without Napalm. but we were kind of like, it was definitely a journey, like finding who we are. So even though we weren't, like I said before, we didn't have any restrictions and it was like this newfound freedom, with that came a lot of fear, because it was like, well, we're so used to having written in those sort of like structures and those boxes. Now it's kind of like we can do whatever we want, which is great, but how far do we take this and what do we actually do? So culling culture actually it's quite nice for us to listen to, because for example, the first song we wrote was Misery, but then the last song we wrote was Fake, and Fake is my favorite song on the album. And it was by then where we were like, okay, we know exactly how we want to sound, we know exactly where we want to take this, and it's made us really excited for album 2, because we've started writing it already and we know exactly who we are now. Whereas before, even though tracks like Misery we love, that was still us being quite cautious and a bit worried about what we should do. So yeah, we're feeling pretty confident now, which is good.
One thing I thought was really interesting is when I got the press release for the record and I'm reading it and it says alternative band from the UK. And I was like, okay, let me check it out. I pressed play, like, this sounds, I mean, it could be alternative to some. I mean, it's something is always alternative to something else, right? But but I was like, this doesn't sound like an alternative band. I mean, actually, I felt like the band itself, like you guys don't have a predefined genre or sound that I could easily plug into a genre. Yeah. The best way I can describe you guys to people is just listen to it and make up your own conclusions, because I honestly cannot put you guys under one specific umbrella. How do you feel about that? Is this a plus for you guys? Could it be a negative in terms of marketing? How does it work?
For us personally, it's a plus, because there's nothing worse than being told that you're one thing and that's it. And like, as a group of people, we all listen to so many different genres of music. Like most of the time I don't even listen to metal. I like listening to a lot of grime and rap and hip hop and stuff like that. So it's actually quite liberating to like not be defined by one genre. But I suppose it is weird, because when people ask, well, what kind of music do you play? Like even in our bios on all our social media, we didn't know what to put. And I know Napalm didn't even know what to put when they were kind of writing the bios for us. So we settled on modern metal. I don't really even know what that means.
But I was going to say, what does that mean? What?
Yeah. It's modern because it's, I don't know, it was written recently, like, and we can't find a genre for it. I know there's definitely proggy elements, there's deathcore, death metal, gen elements. Like we like to take bits and pieces from everywhere. But yeah, I have not got a clue what genre we are. I'll take anything, I don't mind.
For me, I think you guys are a mixture of everything above, like you just mentioned. So that's what makes it really unique. But you guys are also able to blend all of those genres to kind of create your own specific sound. I felt like by the end of the record, you guys have a defined, it was kind of like a controlled chaos at times, but by the time you got to the end of the album, I felt like you guys found yourselves. So yes. I think perhaps the next record will be a little bit better defined from that perspective. But I love the diversity of approach, not just from song to song, but even within the tracks themselves. You guys are not afraid of taking weird turns within a song.
Yeah, thank you. We didn't want to, like I said before, didn't want to restrict ourselves. And I'm such a sucker for grime and rap. It's something that I'd like to dive into a bit more, I think, with my vocals when it comes to like the screaming parts. So I really wanted to see how far I could push it vocally when it came to like doing stupid rhythms at a speed that I can not really breathe to. So I wanted to give myself an asthma attack basically. It's been really fun just like exploring what we can do, because that was what we ultimately tried to do, was write things that we couldn't actually play. And a lot of the songs, when we first started writing them, I couldn't sing or scream. And some of the boys couldn't even play. But we pushed ourselves to the point where by the end, of taking them to the studio, we could actually do them. So, that's been a journey.
I want to talk to you about your vocals, but before we get into the vocals, I want to talk about the lyrics. You already mentioned like these songs are really personal to you because they represent real people, real situations in your life. Do you think that those people listening to these songs, they'll know it's them on the track?
I know a couple of them will, yeah. Some of them won't have a clue, but a couple of them will know, yeah, and they'll probably be absolutely terrified or really pissed off, and that just makes me really happy.
You know, but at least you immortalize them to a certain extent. I mean, like,
yes.
So, you know, there's also that. You could always have that selling point, you know, it's not all bad. I mean, I guess it is all bad, but you know what I mean? But there's always that.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah, and for me, it was kind of my way of, well, you know, you've done me wrong and you've brought me pain and betrayal or whatever it is. But now I've kicked you out of my life and I'm going to write a song about it. And that was my kind of way of writing about it and letting it go, kind of thing. My way of signing them off, so to speak. So yeah, it's been quite therapeutic in a weird, messed up, shouty kind of way.
I felt your vocals were incredible on this record.
Thank you.
Did you have a game plan coming into the album, going into the studio in terms of exactly what you wanted out of it? Or do you feel like that lyrical content being so close to you really pushed you sometimes in one direction or another, regardless of a game plan?
Yeah, definitely. I think depending on each track, who the person was about, it was definitely that would dictate what I did with my voice. I find when I sing, I'm quite insecure about my singing voice because I don't know why, but I prefer doing screams because I feel more confident and powerful. And then when I sing, I feel quite vulnerable. And so I kind of had that approach when it came to deciding what I do, because I thought, well, if there's a vulnerability in the song or a lyric that's vulnerable or sad or anything like that, I'll sing. And if it's aggression and, you know, any hatred or anything like that, I'll scream it. So that was kind of like the approach for when it came to picking and choosing what I did. And then I wanted to absolutely destroy myself. I wanted to do stuff that I physically couldn't do, and then by the end of it be able to do them better than, you know, make it easy. So like, for example, Narcissist, I hadn't even practiced that before I went into the studio, which was stupid, but I went into the vocal booth and I did it and I was like, holy fuck, that is really hard. And then we did a couple more takes and now I can do it and it's really easy. But before I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to do this ever live. And that was a good thing. I wanted to be able to really challenge myself. But yeah, so album 2, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm gonna have to be hooked up to a drip or something in order to get through.
Is there still a song on this record that you're kind of like, oh, that was really hard to nail? I'm glad I did nail it, but let's keep this song off of the set list for future shows because I don't even want to go there. You know, it's nice that I have it behind me, but I don't want to ever have to deal with it again.
Yes, there's one song which is Purity, and Aurora again is probably my other favorite track, but I can sing Aurora. It just has to be in the right place in the set, because obviously it is so vocally big. It's full chest voice. So, you know, so long as it's placed correctly in the set, I love doing it. It's my favorite song next to Fake. But Purity is the hardest song to sing on the album. It's so high up in my vocal range. When Napalm were like, we'd like to make it a single, I was like, well, no. because I will always have to sing it then, and it is really technically really hard. So yeah, I love Purity, and you know, if we have to do it live, I'll just grin and bear it and get on with it. But that's definitely one of those songs that I hope I don't have to do very often, because I do shit myself before practicing that one. It is hard, really hard.
I can imagine that. I mean, that would add extra pressure to already always a pressure situation when you perform live. There's always a little bit of nerves, and having a song
Yes.
that in the back of your mind is your Achilles heel, it just adds unnecessary pressure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And that's pretty much the only song in the whole album that I feel a bit nervous about, other than Aurora. All the others I can do whilst running around being a maniac, but the Purity and Aurora, I have to really kind of concentrate and be an actual like professional for 5 minutes.
Yeah, I would say Aurora, because of the emotional nature of it too, and the way your vocals come across, you almost have to get in a zone, like a very specific zone. You have to almost tune out everything that's happening around you to get into that headspace in order to be able to deliver those vocals.
Yeah, definitely. The first show Vexed ever played actually was Tech Fest, Baptism of Fire. We were supposed to be playing a few shows before that, but they all got cancelled for some stupid reason after another. So Tech Fest turned out to be our first show, which was terrifying. It was a really big crowd, and Aurora was in the set list, and I had tonsillitis at the time. So it was like the worst combination. But I remember as soon as like the backing track came on, it was like the whole atmosphere does change, because I have to go off, I have to quickly do some vocal trills while the intro is happening, I have to drink some water. It's like a completely different space on stage suddenly. So yeah, I'm looking forward to playing it live, but a bit scared as well.
One last question for you. We've talked about the difficulties, we've talked about the challenges, but now that the record is done and the release date is around the corner, really around the corner, as you look back at this album, what is the main strength of this record?
Oh, I think the four of us as a group of friends is so strong, and like there's things that have been happening behind the scenes that like have brought us so close together that we are so ready to like completely, as cringe as it sounds, to just take on the world. And so this record for us is our vindication, and it's just the best first step that I could ever have hoped, dreamed, prayed for. And it's brought us all so close. Looking back on it, I think the strength is not necessarily in the music, but in the people that made it.
Wow, really well said. Well, all I have to add to that is that this is going to be one of my favorite debut records of the year. So you guys did a phenomenal job.
Thank you.
I love this album. You guys blew me away. I absolutely love this record. So I'm glad I didn't look at that alternative metal or alternative, whatever label they put on you guys. I'm glad that didn't stop me from checking the record, because it's way more than just a label. So congratulations to you and the guys.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Really kind of you, and I'm so glad you like it, because I've been terrified about what everybody would think. So it's really nice to hear such kind words. So thank you.
Well, you guys did a phenomenal job. Megan, thank you very much for your time today. All the best with the release date, and hopefully I'll see you guys on some stage at some point in time soon.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.